Okay, it's 6:05. Should I go ahead and get started?
Sounds good. Let's get going.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Melina Pereira, and I am the Caltrans project manager for the San Vicente Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. On behalf of the entire project team, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Daniela Guarino and Carlos Diaz to explain the interpretation options available.
Thank you, Melina. Let's see here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the San Vicente Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan public meeting. If you're having any trouble with your internet connection and need to join the webinar by phone, please call 669-900-9128. Then you'll be prompted to enter the webinar ID, which is 823-2166-7157 to connect to the call audio. Tonight's meeting will be interpreted in Spanish, and for those Spanish speakers joining us, please use the interpretation feature for Spanish audio. To enable the interpretation feature, please look to the bottom of the Zoom screen toolbar where the meeting controls are, then click on the interpretation icon, which looks like a world icon, then select on Spanish as your language. To listen only in Spanish, you can also click on Mute Original Audio. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone or tablet, for interpretation, please press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose Spanish. Now I'll let our interpreter, Carlos, provide the same instructions in Spanish.
Thank you, and gracias, bienvenidos, bienvenidas a esta reunión del Plan Integral de Corredor Multimodal para San Vicente. Se va a contar con servicio de interpretación simultánea para esta sesión. Para hacer uso del servicio, solo necesita desplazarse a la parte inferior de su pantalla, donde aparecen los controles. De ahí haría clic en el icono de interpretación, aparece un globo terráqueo y seleccionaría Spanish o español como su idioma. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en un celular, tableta, etc., primero presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Gracias and thank you.
Thank you, Daniela and Carlos. Next, I'd like to introduce Colleen Clemenson, the Director of Regional Planning at SANDAG, and Gustavo Dalarda, the Director of Caltrans District 11, to provide some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Molina, and welcome everyone to the San Vicente Corridor Planning first public meeting. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for joining us as we discuss the goals for this important corridor. And we recognize that this particular corridor is unique because it contains many rural communities, beautiful natural landscapes, wildlife, hiking, biking, equestrian trails, and connections to tribal land. So we recognize how different this corridor is from other corridors that are currently under planning, which are much more urbanized. Our goal, along with our partners at Caltrans, is to enhance the transportation system and really improve the safety while also maintaining the really important community characteristics that make this such a special place. As we experienced during the pandemic, this really includes bridging the digital divide to make internet access more affordable for our entire region, especially the connections that need to be made in the rural areas. This is why your feedback is so vital to developing this plan. I encourage you all tonight to voice your opinions on the opportunities we discuss. Share them with your neighbors. We invite you to learn more about why transportation is needed throughout San Diego County. And these corridor plans that are getting underway are being developed in alignment with our big picture regional plan. I'll be talking about that a little bit more later, but it's really important as we work on a big picture regional plan that we do this more detailed planning, and then that's what brings what comes together a reality in the near future. So we must ask the important questions tonight. What do we want our region to look like in 2050 and beyond? How will we get around? The work we do at SANDAG, like the 2021 regional plan and these corridor planning efforts, strive to answer these questions and provide a blueprint for a sustainable future for our region. You can participate in regional plan open houses throughout June, and you'll find out more about that at sandiegoforward.com. Before we get started, I want to recognize any staff from any elected offices. I'm not sure that we have any quite yet. I'm going to check and see if I have any updates on that. It looks like Michael Coulis from Supervisor Anderson's office is here with us tonight. So welcome, Mike. It's always great to have you and really appreciate you and the supervisor's interest in this important project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague at Caltrans District 11, Gustavo Gallarda.
Thank you, Colleen. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this public meeting regarding the San Vicente Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. From now on, I will just say CMCP. The SANDAG 5 big moves and the Regional Transportation Plan are the regional vision for implementing the state and Caltrans transportation priorities of modality, innovation, decreasing vehicle miles traveled, and greenhouse gas emissions, addressing climate action, and also equity. CMCP studies are happening in all regions across the state and are required by the state to be competitive for certain state funding. We're working together to plan and build our regional transportation network in accordance with the California Transportation Commission guidelines and Caltrans corridor planning process guides. The CMCP effort is also consistent with a new Caltrans strategic plan and the goal of advancing equity and livability in all communities. This corridor plan aims to examine the diverse set of communities and individuals that use the corridor's transportation network. The most efficient way to do this is through input from the residents, commuters, and travelers of the communities along State Route 67 and the whole transportation shed. With your feedback, this corridor plan can improve all transportation routes and facilities in our community in a variety of ways. This plan will improve safety, create greater trip reliability, and enhance the transportation systems within the corridor boundaries, while supporting habitat preservation and recreational access. Most importantly, it will do so while respecting the unique characteristics of your community. Caltrans has been working on several complementary projects in the area, from paving jobs, projects in downtown Ramona that will enhance parking facilities, and an environmental impact report that will address emergency evacuations and potentially widen 67. Completing this plan will help the San Diego region compete for local, state, and federal funds. It will allow us to maximize future funding and programming opportunities and successfully advance projects towards the construction phase. Our goal at Caltrans District 11, in partnership with SANDAG, is to not just maintain the condition of our transportation system, but to improve the system performance along State Route 67 and all the roads near it. The end result that we're anticipating is a faster, cleaner, safer transportation system in your community that is accessible to all. Thank you for being here and providing your feedback to help us reach this goal. With that, I'll hand it back to Melina.
Thank you, Gustavo. And thank you, Colleen, for providing the opening remarks. I will now provide a quick overview of tonight's meeting. In a moment, we will begin our presentation, which is also being led in Spanish by our interpreter in the Spanish language channel. First, the project team will provide some background on the corridor plan and related corridor efforts, and how these plans and projects tie into the ongoing regional plan. Next, we'll provide an overview of the virtual engagement hub and ways you can stay involved with this corridor plan. After that, we will provide an overview of existing conditions within the corridor and conduct our first audience poll. Finally, we'll review key needs identified by our initial analysis and take your feedback via polls as well as question and answer period. We will conclude with the review of next steps. And now we are going to hear once again from Colleen Clemenson. She's going to tell us more about the 2021 regional plan.
Thank you, Melina. It was a really exciting day last Friday at SANDAG because we released the draft regional plan, which really sets forth a transformational transportation system for the San Diego region. And I think, Janet, you're going through the slides here. It's really a vision that provides travel options for the residents of our region like we've never had before, where we have compelling options to driving and where we fully take advantage of the technologies that are here today, those that will be here in the near future, and those that are coming. So just to kind of lay out, next slide, Janet. We used a data-driven process to come up with this plan. And this is so important because previous plans that SANDAG prepared, and these are state and federal requirements that we prepare a regional plan every 4 years. The previous plans all relied on a set list of transportation projects. And we put those projects into the plan and then looked at what additional funds we might have available to help supplement that. This time we did a completely different approach where we said, let's set aside any thoughts we had about transportation projects. Let's look at data, what the data is telling us about where people are traveling, and then look at the latest innovations in transportation on how to best make those connections in the region. And so this is just a figure here that shows where the densest populations are in the region and where the employment centers are. And I think, Janet, if you do a click here, these two start to come together. And go ahead. Sorry about that. And it was that data that helped us really understand what it is that we are solving for. And in the region, we are solving for traffic congestion, which I know so many of you suffer from on State Route 67, the pure congestion. Social equity, so we really need to make sure that in this plan, we are ensuring that the poorest populations, low income, people of color, have access to upward mobility through transportation and technology, like the broadband that we need, so we're connecting one another. And then we have to meet our state and federal mandates, and these are really about addressing climate change. So those are the three challenges: using data, pulling all of that together. And then the next slide is what we applied as the 5 big strategies, which are the 5 big moves: complete corridors, transit leap, mobility hubs, flexible fleets, and the next operating system. And when we talk about complete corridors, that's why we're doing these planning corridor efforts. We need to look entirely at the corridor, what all modes of transportation are served within that corridor. How do we take public transit to the next level so it's truly a compelling, convenient option? And it may not be the option necessarily in our rural corridors, but it sure can help in the most urbanized areas of the region. And then mobility hubs are where we're making that land use connection. So areas where multiple transportation options come together, and there's some of the densest areas of the region where we want to focus future growth and development in a way that allows us to maximize the transportation investments that are already there and those that are anticipated. Flexible fleets, and this is really about that first last mile and how we utilize cleaner vehicles to help us on that last trip from transit to wherever we need to go. And then the operating system, which is the technology that makes it all work. Once we apply these 5 big strategies, we can go to the next slide. This is a satellite image of the San Diego region in case you don't recognize it. And this first click is a fully connected network of managed lanes. So when you think of what we have on Interstate 15, where we have the 2 managed lanes, doing that throughout the highway system so that we can better serve carpools, better serve public transit, and allow people who want to use those lanes to pay for them and have access. The next click is really about our rural corridors. So how do we improve safety in these corridors? Evacuation routes, apply technology to maximize the investments that we have there. And this is, clearly an issue that you will want to be talking about tonight. The next click shows the commuter rail. This is the big picture transit leap, focused on the most urbanized areas of the community, where we are really focusing on where we have the highest population and connecting those to the primary job centers in the region. Next are the improvements that we are proposing to make to the existing trolley and a whole network of what we call next generation rapid bus that will be operating on separate guideways. The next click shows the mobility hubs. And again, these are in the urbanized areas of the region. And what all connects this is the operating system, which is the technology that maximizes all of these investments. So that's a big picture of the regional plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna Lowe, who's going to talk more about this specific corridor planning effort and how they relate to other corridor plans underway. So Anna.
Thank you, Colleen, for that overview of the 2021 regional plan. Before I jump into the slides, let me introduce myself. My name is Anna Lowe, and I'm supporting Melina as the SANDAG CMCP lead for the San Vicente corridor. And again, would like to thank you for joining us this evening. Now, I'd like to provide more information about the corridor plans and other parallel efforts occurring within the corridor. So what are CMCPs? In September 2019, the SANDAG Board of Directors allocated $40 million to develop 12 corridor plans throughout the region. The Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plans, or CMCPs, build upon the regional plan and take a more detailed look at transportation in selected areas of the region. 5 of these corridor plans are currently being developed as a joint effort between SANDAG and Caltrans, with input from local jurisdictions, partner agencies, and community stakeholders. The yellow section at the top of the map is the North County Corridor, which includes State Route 78, Palomar Airport Road, and more. The green section that cuts horizontally through the center of the map is the Coast, Canyons, and Trails Corridor, which really encapsulates State Route 52. The large purple section in the south is the South Bay to Sorrento corridor, and that is the largest of the 5 corridors. It includes Southern I-5, the 805, and State Route 75 in Coronado. The blue section represents the Central Mobility Hub. And last but absolutely not least is the San Vicente corridor, which is shown by the orange section along the eastern portion of the map, and that includes State Route 67. The corridor plans use travel and demographic data, community plans, and public input to develop multimodal transportation solutions to provide better access to jobs, education, and services. The corridor studies will be looking at all transportation modes: transit services, highway, local roadways, bike, walking, and even equestrian paths, flexible fleets, goods movement, and the technologies needed to help them all work together efficiently. These corridor plans also help the San Diego region compete for transportation project funding, including state Senate Bill 1 funds. Next slide, please. It is important to understand how these corridor plans complement and enhance other regional planning efforts. You heard Colleen describe the 2021 regional plan as a long-term blueprint for the region. The corridor plans are more focused, location-specific efforts centered around planning and project development for the unique communities along the corridors. Today, we're here to talk about the San Vicente corridor, highlighted on the map in green. This is known as the study area, and this is where projects and strategies studied and developed by this plan will be concentrated. Finally, the area of influence, which is illustrated by the tan-colored image on the map, represents areas and communities that will benefit from improvements studied in this plan. With that, I'd like to hand things over to my colleague, Marvin Canton, who will provide an overview of the parallel efforts happening in the corridor.
Thank you, Anna, and good evening, everybody. I am Marvin Canton, the SR67 Highways Improvement Project Manager. I'd like to give a quick overview of some of the parallel efforts we're working on. We are working on a P&D project that extends 16 miles from Mapleview Street and Lakeside to Highland Valley Die Road and Ramona. The P&D project will focus mostly on enhancing operations that will improve the safe and efficient movement of people and goods, utilizing various modes of travel during both typical highway operations and emergencies such as wildfires. Project objectives also include encouraging active transportation, providing multimodal options such as bike paths and/or lanes where feasible, facilitating recreational and wildlife movement across the route, and preserving the human and natural environment along the SR67. The P&D project effort will help advance the San Vicente CMCP high-level concepts within the project limits and will help the corridor compete for transportation project funding in the San Diego region. The other parallel effort is the SR67 Pavement Rehabilitation Project, which proposes to repair and improve the overall ride quality on 18.4 miles of travelway and shoulders on the SR67 from just north of the San Diego River Bridge and Lakeside to State Route 78, 10th Street in Ramona. The California Transportation Commission has approved the installation of broadband capabilities to help expand residential affordability as part of the project, which will be done simultaneously with the paving rehab. And now I'd like to hand it off to Ashley Johnson.
Great, thanks everyone. We wanted to first go into some meeting ground rules. Amy, I think you can go to the next slide. Before we get started with the presentation and the Q&A panel, we just wanted to go over how the question and answer portion will work and just go over how you can contact us. So the question and answer segment will be held after tonight's presentation. We ask that everyone please be respectful and when you are providing comments into the chat box. Also, inappropriate language will not be permitted, so you will be removed from the webinar if there is any inappropriate language. If you are having a technical problem, we ask that you please send a message via the webinar chat box or by calling 619-786-6007. You can also reach us anytime after the webinar by calling or texting us at cmcp@sandag.org. You can also reach our hotline at 888-317-8976 or text the team at 844-569-0570 to provide feedback. And then with that, we would like to have our first audience poll question of the night, just to get an idea of who is joining us from around the county. And before we get started, just to let you know, this is just preliminary polling, and the Q&A segment will be held after the presentation again. So if you do have questions, that will be the time to submit them. So for the first poll question, we're going to launch it right now. So you should have a window that pops up, and there's going to be 3 questions, and we'll review them together. Submit your answers, and then we will go over everybody's feedback. Actually, Daniela, my polling feature disappeared. Would you be able to launch the first poll? Excellent. All right. So first off, how did you learn about this meeting? Select all that apply in the list. That is our first question of the night. Second, are you attending alone or with any others? Let us know if you're with a group as well, if you want your attendees represented or you want to provide feedback on behalf of people who might not be signed in under your name. You can provide their information to us during the Q&A session in the chat box. And then finally, where do you live? We listed out different regions within the study area, and we'd love to know where you are coming from, the location that you will be representing tonight. So great, we're just gonna give everyone just 10 more seconds. And it looks like we still have a few more people answering, so we'll just do another 10 seconds and then we'll review the answers. All right, great. Fantastic. So it looks like most of you learned about tonight's meeting from an email invite, as well as through Facebook and Instagram, or through advertising. So this is great feedback. It allows us to know how best to reach you all in the future and make sure that we're able to stay in contact and share information. So thank you, everyone. And looks like most of you are attending alone, but again, if you're with somebody else and you want them represented tonight, let us know in the Q&A feature. And then where do you live? Looks like we have great representation throughout the county. And again, thank you so much everyone for providing this feedback. We really appreciate it. I'm gonna end the poll now and we'll move on to our next section and we'll have a few more polls throughout the night to get your feedback. And then I'm going to turn it over now back to Daniela to talk to you about our virtual engagement hub and how you can get more engaged in the project.
Thanks, Ashley. We do have more opportunities for everyone to continue to connect with us after this meeting and give us specific feedback about your community. And our virtual engagement hub is where you can learn more about the San Vicente Corridor Plan and learn more about general CMCP efforts, keep updated on the latest developments, and also provide input at any time. We have great features you can use, including a survey, an interactive map, and a comment form. Our interactive map allows you to give location-specific feedback on what you think could be improved or what you think works well in the corridor. You can ask on the exact location, whether it's recommended improvements to bike and hiking trails or areas of the SR 67 that need more safety signage. And perfect. If you haven't visited the site yet, there is a short video on the site with instructions on how to add your comments. And additionally, the survey is open until June 30th. So please submit your feedback as soon as you can after tonight. So now I'll hand it off to Daryl, who can provide more feedback on the CMCP development process.
All right, thank you, Daniela. Appreciate that. So yeah, I'm Daryl DePontier. I'm in the lead for the consulting team working under Melina and Anna. So I'm just going to walk you guys through a little bit about what we found in the corridor so far, and in terms of what we see as the things that this plan can best address to improve conditions moving forward, and to talk a little bit about how the corridor plan is going to be functioning altogether. So right now, the phase we're in is completing what we're calling the needs assessment, which is really looking at what's working well in the corridor and what can be improved. We've talked to subject matter experts on a variety of issues, from active transportation to transit to utilities to freight. We've conducted stakeholder working group, talking to the local planning groups, transit providers, and other agencies. And then we've done some technical analysis, looking at the data along the corridor. And right now we're talking to you to get some feedback from your end so that we can really package together all of these things that this plan can address. once we're done this meeting through June and July, we'll be reviewing all that and we'll be developing some potential concepts, identifying different things we can do on the corridor that might address those needs as we find it. We'll be coming to you again at that point to get your feedback on some of what we want to propose. And then once we have all that together, we're going to go through the implementation plan. We're going to figure out exactly how this plan will be built, how it will be funded, and we'll come to you a third time to show you how the plan has come together and how your input has been directly led to the plan as it came out. So in terms of the process and how we're putting it all together, it's the existing conditions that we've done. I'm going to walk through that a little bit, and then the themes that we've heard from the stakeholders and subject experts and you. And that's what creates that needs assessment that we're working on right now. So that we're getting pretty close to that being complete. So just a quick overview of what we've found. So when we looked at the corridor, we realized that there are really 6 very distinct areas in the corridor. So we've divided them out. They're labeled on this map. So we have the lakeside area down in the south from Mapleview, basically to Vigilante Canyon Road, where we have some urban, some business uses. There's a lot of commuting between El Cajon and Santee along here. We have a tight bridge. We have some intersections that are complicated. So really focusing on this one as a corridor that can be used to better connect the community within Lakeside. Then we have what we're calling the climb. So that's that steep section that goes up around the reservoir. It's a lot wider there. It's a bit more freeway. We have lanes for trucks. It's pretty much a route to get from A to B, a few places with some nice scenery. And then we go through the section that is Poway, between Poway Road and Scripps Parkway Road. It's a fairly straight section. And then we go up into what we're calling Recreation Ridge, which, as you probably are aware, is one of the most constrained parts of the corridor. There's a lot of steep cliffs on one side, the other, a lot of curvature, makes it a little bit more of a scenic, but a little bit slower of a drive. And then we have our wine country area. So that's where we have a lot of driveways that access the highway. So it's still a little bit narrower. We've got some curves. So we've got that big separation between the 2 directions. And we get into Ramona itself, which this section has quite a few different sub areas within it itself, but this is really the main street for the community of Ramona. It's a highway that also has to be a main street. So people need to be able to walk, they need to be able to bike, we need to have freight moving through here, emergency access, and it also needs to work for the businesses and residents of Ramona specifically. And then all those sections together have to come together in a cohesive route that can also serve the regional need for a highway. So some of the things that we looked at are, what are the economic conditions along the corridor? Where can things maybe be more economic potential be tapped from the region with this corridor? What kind of travel trends do we see? Active transportation or bicycle and pedestrian facilities along there, transit services along the corridor, safety, which we know is a concern for a lot of you, emergency evacuation, which is also an issue that we've heard a lot about, park and rides, electric vehicle potential, and then social equity and tribal communities too that rely on this corridor. So we want to make sure that the corridor works for all the people who live in the area, regardless of income and ethnic status and all of that. So in terms of the economic conditions, really, we have the 2 major hubs, Ramona and Lakeside. That's where almost all of the jobs in the corridor really are. We've got a few small spots just north in that Slaughterhouse Canyon area, and then a few wineries and things along the edge, but the predominant economic activities are Ramona and Lakeside. So providing access to those areas and making sure that all the freight can access that will help those areas blossom and provide more opportunity for the residents and jobs. Origin destination. So what are the trips that this corridor actually serves? When we looked at some data for that, we really see that Ramona is a major contributor to through traffic, and there's a big connection between Ramona, Poway, Ramona, Escondido, the El Cajon Santee area. And actually, when you look out to Miramar, when you look at Lakeside, a very heavy connection down to El Cajon, a fair amount of traffic between there and the Barona Reservation, and also that Mira Mesa area. And then the Barona Casino itself, again, very well connected to El Cajon and Ramona. and as well to San Diego itself. So those are some really key destinations. Also, you'll notice that pink arrow, it's one of the thickest arrows, is actually commute traffic between Poway and the El Cajon area that relies on this corridor, but neither of the ends of that trip are within this study area. So that's also a generator of some potential congestion, and it's a use that we need to be aware of as we're planning for how this corridor will work. In terms of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, if you're a casual cyclist or pedestrian, SR67 is currently not probably an ideal route for you. It does not have any designated bicycle facilities along it. There's no sidewalks. The intersections may be challenging with really long distances to cross and no crosswalks. There are lots of trailheads and other amenities along the corridor that people might want to bike to. And then within Ramona itself, we have a bit more in terms of sidewalks and other things that are beneficial, like crosswalks and things. Lakeside has some fairly challenging intersections for pedestrians. It also has the San Diego River, which the bridge there is not a very friendly crossing at this time right now either. And then there are other bicycle lanes and things as shown on the map on the right that connect to the corridor, but are not serving it directly. Transit service. So right now, the Ramona area is connected to Escondido by transit, and Lakeside has some transit circulation that connects to Santee and El Cajon. There is really no consistent transit right now running up and down the corridor. MTS has a Thursday and Friday service, one bus each day per direction. So that's not really going to permit anybody to have a job or do anything, any reliable transit connections that need to pass down that corridor. We also know that a lot of traffic between Ramona and Lakeside go to destinations that are not currently served by transit. There are not a lot of really consolidated destinations, so it makes some of those transit services difficult, but we are working on all that. Collisions. So we know that this corridor does have a history of some collisions. This is a really high-level thing to show that Ramona and Lakeside actually have most of the collisions, but there are a few other areas along the corridor that do stand out, and particularly the grade or that climb area when we're going past the reservoir, the intersection with Poway Road, and the Dye Highland Valley Road intersection to the north. And then we have, just looking at the Wildcat Canyon corridor, there's a couple areas near the casino that have lit up as well. So those are areas that we're going to be looking at from that safety perspective. Emergency evacuation is another big one. So we have to remember that evacuations are fluid things. They can happen in lots of different ways. So we don't know what direction people are going to be trying to evacuate from. We don't know where the source of the evacuation need is, but this really shows the key routes in and out of the study area, going east, north, west, and south. So we're doing a bit of modeling to see how much capacity that is. When we look, the little map on the right shows where we see the most key bottlenecks along the corridor that we would want to address, where there just really is no ability right now with the available pavement to add extra emergency lanes of traffic. So those are going to be some of the focus areas to make sure that we're addressing that evacuation need. Park and rides and EV charging. So there is quite a bit of park and ride along the corridor right now. We've got the 5 lots, and these are really great for van pool, carpool, making sure those connections can happen. And potentially if we get some more transit service, they could be served with that as well. There are also great opportunities to provide those electrical vehicle charging stations, which are not very common in the area just yet, but as we move into the future and more of the vehicles available to purchase are going to be less expensive and electrical, we want to make sure that this area is ready and able to support that. So looking on the equity side, we have two angles of this. One is tribal lands. So we do have a lot of tribal communities in our study and influence area. So those communities rely on this corridor. We are including the tribal working group as part of our study to make sure we're hearing from these tribes and making sure those concerns are understood. And those are part of where some of those analysis criteria we're looking at came from. And then we also have on the next slide, a look at where some of the other social equity focused communities are. So low income communities, minority communities, senior communities. And if you look at this, really the Ramona and Lakeside area where most of the population is also where most of those the equity focused communities are. So as we look through this plan, we want to make sure that both of those communities have adequate services and transportation options for people who might not be able to use a single occupant vehicle and may have other barriers to accessing traditional transportation. So this is just a quick summary graph to show how those issues stack together along the corridor. So if you look on the bottom, you can see the different areas, those 6 sections of the corridor that we mentioned. And then this chart shows the higher the peak on it is, where the most of those issues stacked up. So when we look at Lakeside, we saw safety, evacuation bottlenecks, we saw delay, and we saw a lack of bicycle and pedestrian connectivity. So that's why that peak is so high. Looking at the north of Poway Road, there's a peak there, and that's where that area with the really constrained bottleneck is. That's the tightest part of the route for evacuation and ability to add extra lanes. So that's why that area lights up so much. And then when we look into this, the boundary of wine country in Ramona, Moosey Grade Road and Highland Valley, that area, that's another bottleneck. We have some small bridges and we had some collisions there. And it is an area that was also a little bit more prone to delay. So those are some key things that we're going to be looking at as we develop our concepts moving forward. The next slide. All right, so to get into the needs assessment a little bit more directly, I'm going to pass it over to Amy Jackson. She's the deputy project manager on the consultant team, and she's going to walk through a little bit about what I've just gone through and how that is going to impact the study and what we're looking at.
Thanks, Daryl. So as Daryl mentioned, we're using multiple avenues of feedback, including those stakeholder working group meetings, the various subject matter expert meetings, and the existing conditions analysis results that Daryl just shared with you in order to form the current list of corridor needs that you can see here on the screen. And so today we'll be getting that last piece of feedback that we need in order to finalize this list for the needs for the corridor. And we'll be walking through each of these community identified needs listed on the screen and getting polling responses from you on each one of these. So as mentioned previously, we're looking for a good amount of feedback here. We want to hear from you. This is your opportunity to chime in and make sure that we're on the right path with moving this corridor plan forward. So the first key need that we've identified, it's widely known, we've mentioned it multiple times here today. The study area is a wildfire hazard zone, and we've gotten anecdotal evidence that previous evacuations in the 2000s, the evacuations can take several hours given the current infrastructure and the current evacuation techniques that are deployed on the corridor. So the CMCP team has identified the need to improve evacuation capacity and decrease evacuation times as a critical and primary need for this corridor. So examples of strategies for addressing that kind of need include addressing the physical bottlenecks, using electric signage to increase the number of evacuation lanes during an evacuation, and providing real-time notifications for emergencies. So here's your first opportunity to chime in. We've got 2 questions for you for this first one. And I think, yes, it should be deployed now. So first question is, have you ever experienced an evacuation event within the corridor? And your choices are simply yes or no. And make sure that you get to the second question too. That question is, what factors delay evacuations? And you can select multiple. Your options being lack of timely information, intersections and traffic signals, lane merges, not enough lanes, broken down cars, or you can choose other if you don't see what you like on this list and you want to chime in, and you can put in the Q&A if you have other. If you don't see something that you agree with on this list and you want to provide something different, feel free to choose other and put that answer in the Q&A.
And we'll give everyone just about 10 more seconds. Mm,
All right, great. So it looks like we do have some people in the audience that have experienced an evacuation event. So we definitely want to hear from you in terms of your feedback for issues that you specifically experienced. Looks like the most common answer was not enough lanes and lack of timely information. So thank you for that feedback. Okay. The next need is improving roadway safety. And ways that we can look to improve safety include addressing the safety hotspots. Those are what Daryl explained earlier. You know, we see them on various spots in the corridor, mainly on sharp curvature areas and some of the major intersections. Providing new wayfinding signage and lane markings in order to reduce confusion and last-minute decision-making. And we also want to keep in mind that while implementing any of these strategies, we want to balance the other corridor needs that we've identified as well. So your next question, there's just one this time. What do you see as key factors impacting roadway safety? And you can, again, select all that apply, or you can choose other. Your options being sharp curves, lack of signage and wayfinding, intersections, conflicts with recreation parking, turnout and driveway conflicts, high speeds, impaired drivers, or again, you can choose other.
Okay, we're just gonna give everyone about 10 more seconds. And also, we just want to invite everyone tonight, if you're representing an organization, to let us know in the Q&A or chat function.
And it is looking like our top answer is high speeds. We also see sharp curves and conflicts with recreational parking, definitely something we've identified. So thank you for your feedback. Okay. Next, we have creating high quality pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian facilities. So wherever possible, we want to provide separation from traffic for pedestrians and bicyclists. We also want to protect equestrian users from that conflict with traffic. And we also want to provide enhanced crossings for pedestrians and bicycles across the corridor. So your next question regarding pedestrians and bikes and equestrian is, what improvements are most important to you related to bikes, peds, and equestrian facilities in the corridor? Your options, and you can select multiple: separated bike facilities, off-street equestrian facilities, creating bikeable communities in Ramona and Lakeside, providing more sidewalks in commercial areas, increasing safe pedestrian crossings, and providing more parking at the trailheads, or other.
Okay, we'll just give another about 10 seconds.
All right, and it looks like separated bike facilities was the top answer. And we also had more parking at trailheads, which definitely ties into the conflicts at trailheads that we saw in the previous question. So thank you. Next, this was a big one that we heard in the subject matter expert meetings and the stakeholder working group meeting, was improving utility resilience and creating EV infrastructure. So this is a big topic that we've heard a lot from the public and stakeholders on. So with that, we would be looking to potentially build EV charging stations, install broadband fiber for all corridor communities, and make utilities more resilient to wildfires. So your next question What key needs related to utilities and communications for community growth and emergencies? What are key needs, sorry. And your options: more reliable electricity, better internet connectivity, better cell phone reception, electric vehicle charging stations, emergency signage and traffic operations with real-time information. Or you can choose other, as always.
Okay. We'll just do another about 10 seconds here.
All right, we've got a three-way tie. A lot of people voted for better internet connectivity, better cell phone reception, and emergency signage and traffic operation with real-time information. So thank you. And again, just a reminder, if you are choosing other, feel free to put your input in the Q&A for what you are thinking for other. Next, we have increasing information accessibility. Examples would be using push notifications to increase emergency awareness, developing demand-based transit options for corridor communities, and/or using electronic signage for real-time information. So along those lines, your next question: what are the most significant needs related to information accessibility? Real-time information for emergencies, allowing traffic signals to help prioritize emergency traffic, managing traffic dynamically for special events and tourist seasons, providing on-demand transportation for seniors and those who cannot drive, or providing more transit connections to neighboring cities. Or you can choose other.
Okay, we'll just do about 10 more seconds on this one.
All right, we have real-time information again making the top, and as well as allowing traffic signals to prioritize emergency traffic. Awesome. So we have two more. Thanks again for all of your feedback. Creating Main Street in Ramona that works for all users. So some options there would be creating high visibility pedestrian facilities, maintaining Main Street as a freight corridor, and considering livestock and maintaining smooth roadways with our improvements. So thinking about what's most important to you regarding Main Street in Ramona, your options would be, and this is your most significant needs relating to that Main Street: reducing vehicle congestion, making safer and more comfortable bike facilities and pedestrian facilities, promoting businesses fronting the street, slowing down vehicles moving through Main Street, or enhancing Main Street aesthetics, and other.
Amy, we'll do 10 more seconds on this one.
Great, so looks like making safer and more comfortable facilities for bikes and peds is the most important to this group. I think going along with that, we have slowing down vehicles, which goes hand in hand with making safer and more comfortable facilities, and enhancing Main Street aesthetics. So all great stuff, thank you. Last one, creating community connection in Lakeside. So some opportunities there would be creating opportunities for all users to cross the San Diego River, improving safety for all users crossing 67, and building connections to the western communities of Lakeside. So along those lines, the most significant needs related to creating connections in Lakeside, that is your next question. And your options are reducing conflicts at the intersections, providing more bicycle and pedestrian crossings over 67, at 67, increasing opportunities to cross the San Diego River, and providing the Wildcat Canyon connection to the Western communities or other. Sorry, Eastern communities.
You just about 10 more seconds on this one.
All right, looks like reducing conflicts at intersections and providing more bike and pedestrian crossings are the most important here. So that is all of the polls that we have for you. We really appreciate all of your feedback here and look forward to diving into some of those who chose other and seeing what other ideas and strategies or improvements you have for us as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Melina to bring us to the conclusion.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone for your participation in the polls. Before we get to our Q&A, I would like to briefly outline the next steps in the development process of the San Vicente Corridor Plan. Firstly, we will complete the needs assessment based on your feedback tonight and the feedback within the engagement hub. Next, we will begin to evaluate project alternatives and create an implementation plan for improvements along the corridor. Finally, we will complete the CMCP towards the end of the year. At regular intervals throughout the process, we will again seek your input so that we can continue to have, so you can continue to have a say in the development of this corridor plan. Next slide. So now I will move into our Q&A. As a reminder, please use the Q&A function on this webinar to submit your questions during this period. And Ashley, can you start us off with the first question?
Yes, let me just pull up our spreadsheet really quickly. And you know what, it looks like nobody, at least we don't have any questions submitted yet in our tracking document. So just want to make sure that everyone knows how to use the Q&A function. If you go to your control settings, your control panel towards the bottom of your screen and select the Q&A box, you should be able to open that and submit your question. Oh, looks like we got one in now. All right. And then we are going through the questions. All right, the first question is, will these survey questions be available for others who are not on the Zoom tonight? So I can answer that one. They're not going to be available, but however, the more thorough survey that you would want to take that will go over the same topics and provide you with a more formal opportunity to submit your feedback is actually through our virtual engagement hub. We shared the link for that earlier in the chat. And you can go to that site to provide comments. There's also a survey that is available and will be up until June 30th to get your feedback, as well as a mapping tool in which you can use the map tool to provide feedback in specific areas within the corridor. And so we highly encourage you to check out that site. Again, it's in the chat, and that is actually the best way for you to provide your feedback. All right. Next question is it possible to get a copy of the presentation? Is it on SANDAG or the county's website? Thanks. And we have that directed at Anna.
Sorry, you'd think after however long now that I'd be a lot more proficient with Zoom at all. The presentation and the recording will all be posted on the SANDAG webpage, and that will be, and we can put a link to the San Vicente corridor page directly on the in the chat here if that's helpful.
I did it myself now with the mute. Great, thank you so much, Anna. All right, so the next question that we have is off-street equestrian facilities would be for non-motorized uses, right? Not equestrian exclusive uses, and that is directed at Amy.
Sure. So I think that where possible, where feasible, where there's space, we would want to keep those facilities separate. Being able to provide an equestrian facility that's separate from, say, an off-street bike facility or an off-street pedestrian facility would be ideal. But there may be points in the corridor where there's constraints, and those need to potentially be combined, and they would just have different. Each of those different facilities has different requirements, so we'd have to take those all into account.
Great, thank you, Amy. And the next question we have is directed at Daryl. And that question is, where did the accident and collision data come from?
All right, that's a good question. So we actually used a few sources for it. The primary one being the statewide integrated traffic record system, SWITRS. So that's what the system that the California Highway Patrol maintains. But we also looked at Caltrans's data as well to make sure we had some historical records. But yeah, the SWITRS system was our primary source.
Great, thank you, Daryl. And then our next question is from Marvin. Is a trail tunnel under Poway Road at the SR 67 intersection under consideration? It would connect to Coast and Poway.
Right now, we're considering everything, and we'll let the environmental study tell us what we need, what we can do or not do. So nothing's off right at the table at this point.
Great, thank you, Marvin. All right, our next question is for Amy. So most Ramona residents are concerned about sharing the lanes on Highway 67 with bicycles. The bike lanes need to be completely separate. Amy, can you speak to this a little bit?
Sure. I think similar, it will need to be studied in detail what is feasible and what's not. Ideally, we heard from the polls today, bike and pedestrian facilities are very important, and high speeds and safety are a concern. And so with that type of facility, we definitely always look to provide the highest level of protection for pedestrians and bicyclists if we have high speeds and high volume roadways. So that again is the ideal condition, is to provide separation and provide a separated bike way or bike lane rather than forcing bikes to share the lane on 67. So that is ideal, but we have to look into the constraints and what's feasible. But that is definitely what we are hoping to be able to provide.
Great, thank you, Amy. And then our next question goes to Daryl and Marvin. What measures will be used to prevent induced demand by vehicles during the course of these improvements?
I guess I'll start, and then Marvin, if you have anything to add. But induced demand is always a challenge whenever you're adding capacity to a roadway. So there's a few factors there. Is the current demand being met by the existing facility? And if we create new capacity, are we creating new trips that didn't exist before by making it easier for people to move forward? So that's always a balance that we're looking at when we plan for capacity improvements. We want to make sure that we're serving the demand that's needed while not building so much so that we're just creating space for people to fill up without any specific need. So when we're looking at our demand analysis, it is factoring that in when we're trying to decide how much space we need. Marvin, I don't know if you had any more to add to that.
Not at this time, Daryl. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. Sorry, my mute button got stuck. All right, our next question is for Amy. Are the non-motorized uses intended to be pathways along the highway or trails that meander away from the highway?
So I think, again, I hate to keep giving you the same answer, but it kind of depends on the section, segment by segment. We will be studying each of these active transportation facilities for pedestrians, bicycles, and equestrian. We've heard, for the equestrian facilities in particular, they need to be further away from the highway due to the horses not responding well to the highway noise, things like that. So I think, again, where it's feasible to provide an off-street multi-use path that really serves more of the recreational type of facility and those types of characteristics that can connect into the recreational facilities. Whereas when you are in a downtown setting, you really want the bikes and pedestrians to be more interactive with the adjacent land uses. And so you would normally put those more so on street. So it's kind of a segment by segment solution for this corridor.
Great, thank you, Amy. All right, next question. Is it possible to have a larger sign similar to the one for the Iron Mountain Trailhead sign done for Mount Woodson? The current one is inadequate as it isn't easy for hikers to know where they are. And that question is from Marvin.
Thank you. We're currently looking into that. I've actually posted that information with our traffic operations team, and they'll be getting back to me as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you. All right, our next question is for Daryl. Will the CMCP address water harvesting and shade trees as part of built transportation projects?
So we do actually have an environmental component to this project as well. We have an environmental subconsultant on it. So looking at water resources and trees, and particularly how it relates to wildfire, and all of those factors are part of what we're looking at, but only insofar as a planning level study like this can do. What this study is going to lead to is a set of higher level recommendations, and then studies like the one that Marvin's working on are the ones that would go into those more detailed components of what the specific project will include, what needs to be there in terms of different environmental considerations for runoff, water capture, all those kind of things that are needed. So beyond that higher level recommendation, that's about as far as we can take it at this level of the plan.
Great, thank you so much, Daryl. Our next question is for Marvin. How likely is it that we'll get additional lanes on Highway 67?
Currently, we're investigating. We have a total of 7 different alternatives for the PNDA study. We're going to let the environmental studies determine it, and the traffic studies determine if additional widening is needed at certain segments of the 67.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is for Amy. Are any comfort stations, bathrooms being recommended along the route?
Sure. So we aren't in the recommendations phase necessarily right now. We're still looking at needs assessment. But during our subject matter expert meeting with pedestrians and bicycles, we did hear a lot of feedback regarding a desire to have rest stops, pocket parks, pit stops, like fix-it stations, something like that. And I think there was also talk of, doing a pilot study to, provide something like that, see how often it gets used, get some feedback, and choose a more permanent solution or location for some of those amenities for pedestrians and bicycles. So definitely these are things that have been recommended and will be looked into.
Great, thank you, Amy. All right, our next question is from Marvin again. Is Caltrans going to take steps such as a trail tunnel to reduce the danger posed to hikers crossing SR 67 at Iron Mountain?
Sorry, I apologize because it sounds like I keep saying the same answer over and over. But yeah, we're looking into different ideas of what we can do. We're trying, one of the comments that came up was to make sure that we separate anything that's going to be used for wildlife from regular pedestrian usage. So we're having the team look into all those different options.
Great, thank you. And then I also just wanted to acknowledge a comment that we received from Kevin Wallace of the Ramona Planning Group, who said that I would like to see the population growth data projected for Ramona that you are using. I am a longtime Ramona resident. I find Highway 67 is fine for a country road. I don't know if any
Actually,
of
I
the-
can respond to that real quick if that's
Thank
helpful. Hi, Kevin. So right now, our data that we're using in terms of projections don't really show much of a population increase in Ramona for the duration of this study. So we're really not expecting to have to deal with a lot more capacity need than we are dealing with right now in terms of what we're going to ultimately recommend. It does, however, show the economic activity in Ramona increasing a little bit. So what the traffic level is right now will probably increase some, but not as much as it would with a significant population increase.
Excellent, thank you so much, Daryl. All right. So the next one is for Rachel. Is the new vehicle miles traveled tax the intended funding mechanism for Highway 67 improvements? We already paid the gas tax, which is obviously more money for those of us who travel further.
Sure. So I think this question relates to the vehicle miles traveled charge that was included in the recently released draft 2021 regional plan. And it's also something that's being explored at the state level. So I think there's a couple of different aspects that the vehicle mile travel fee looks to address. With the gas tax that's currently collected, in the future, we're anticipating that more vehicles will be switching over to become electric vehicles, and electric vehicles don't pay the gas tax, but they do drive on the roads and create wear and tear similar to gas-powered vehicles. And additionally, this could be a source of funding in the future, not only for improvements on 67, but throughout the region. There's different transportation funding sources that are being explored. And over the years, while cars have gotten more efficient from a fuel consumption perspective, which is good for the environment and also good for people's pocketbooks and not having to potentially purchase as much gas, there's also less money that's in turn then collected through that gas tax. Which affects the ability for funding of projects that are still needed because people are still utilizing the roadways, but that revenue source is not perhaps robust as a proportion of funds collected as it may have been in the past.
Excellent, thank you, Rachel. And then there was a question or a comment that I missed earlier, and this is directed at Marvin. The overall growth of the region has resulted in I apologize, I just lost my screen, has resulted in increased vehicles on our highways. It's more of a comment of a question, but Marvin, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
At this time, we're actually taking consideration that growth, and it's being put into our models. So the modeling we're doing, it's taking that into consideration.
Great, thank you. All right, and then the next question is for Amy. Is a median with tall trees down the middle of Ramona's Main Street under consideration? Aesthetics and pedestrian safety are the reasons.
We have not considered that yet, but we will take that into consideration. A median definitely provides for a refuge area for pedestrians when crossing large or wide streets such as 67 and Main Street in Ramona. It provides a refuge area for them to cross two different directions of traffic at different times, rather than both directions of traffic at once. So it definitely creates reduced crossing distance and higher safety. However, medians can be challenging for evacuation. So we just need to balance the trade-offs with those two major needs for this corridor.
Great, thank you, Amy. The next question is for Daryl. Will viewpoints be considered? Right now, people pull off the side of the road to enjoy the impressive views. Viewpoints could also be safe pullouts for slower traffic and cars with mechanical breakdowns.
Yeah, that's all on the table. As we go through, we're going to be looking at the concepts for the different corridors. So where we see patterns of traffic collisions or congestion that seems related to those things, that is very much a potential recommendation. If we find that it's feasible to do, we could absolutely find ourselves including that as part of the plan.
Great, thank you. And just wanted to throw in there a last call for questions. We are at 7:20, so we'll be taking questions up until about 7:25. So please get them in. If we don't get to your question tonight, we will follow up with you. But with that, the next question is for Daryl. The transient recreational population of Ramona is growing rapidly with the growth of our winery industry and other recreational opportunities. Is that increase in roadway usage being considered?
That is 100% being considered. That is a big part of our discussions internally as a team, and it's well understood that we're seeing that pattern. And we're looking at several potential solutions that could help manage that, because it's important for the economic vitality of the region that we encourage that growth, but we also need to make sure that it's safe and does not cause too many mobility challenges for local residents. So yes, absolutely, we are aware of and considering that as part of our plan.
Excellent, thank you. And then, oh, I have a question. How many people are on this Zoom tonight? Actually, Daniela, you're the host. I don't know if I'm able to see how many are actually attending. Oh, we have 63 participants attending tonight. I see. And 66 overall throughout the night. And as mentioned, we will continue to have opportunities to weigh in, even if for people who are not able to attend tonight. We will be sharing tonight's presentation on the Engagement Hub website and also continuing to collect feedback. So everyone make sure to sign on to that website and get in your survey feedback and use our mapping tool. We really want to hear from you all. All right. So this next question is for Amy. Thinking of Main Street, Ramona, and safety for crossing the street, is there a plan? Is there a plan to put a crosswalk at Main and 8th Street? Families walk their children to school and use that area to cross in the morning and night, as well as people shopping along Main Street. I know many years ago there was a crosswalk.
Sure. So that specific level of detail about where crosswalks will be recommended, we are not there yet, but we will be looking at every potential location where pedestrians could cross or where there may potentially be a desire line today, meaning, you know, say at the trailheads where there's a parking lot across the street from the trailhead and there's no crossing there today, you know, that's called a desire line. So are people crossing there today, and do they need to be does there need to be enhancements? We'll be looking at those desire lines as well as existing crosswalks that may not be ADA compliant or could potentially benefit from other enhancements, such as, you know, I'm just throwing things out here, don't quote me on anything, but, you know, raised crosswalks that slow vehicles, or you know, curb extensions, things like that, that not only help pedestrian safety, but also slow vehicles as well. So as far as specific locations, we're not exactly sure, but the type of feedback that you just provided is very helpful for us in evaluating that in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Amy. And then we have our final question. Will you explain again where we can send our comments and questions after this meeting is over? Yes, actually, if you can see the slide that's up on the Zoom right now, if you're calling in, I'll read it, but it's the website that is colored in pink, and it is sandag.mysocialpinpoint.com/San Vicente. And this is the website where you can go to take a survey on the project and provide your feedback, as well as use the mapping tool to map areas within the study area that you want to provide feedback on. So we highly encourage everyone to please visit the site after tonight's meeting and provide additional feedback. And thank you again for all of your great comments tonight.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This has been really great, and we greatly appreciate all of your questions and comments. After this meeting, we will be seeking public input on the San Vicente Corridor Plan. So we want to encourage you all and your respective communities to visit the San Vicente Corridor Plan Virtual Engagement Hub. We've added the links for the Spanish and English hubs to the chat as well. So on this virtual engagement hub, there are multiple ways to provide feedback for the corridor. You can learn more about the corridor plan, submit your comments and feedback on our interactive map, and take our survey. The survey closes on June 30th. So just know that we are listening, and we hope that you share this information with your neighbors, colleagues, and families to help get the best community representation possible. So feel free to email us and reach us after this webinar. You can email or call or text using the information provided. So the email is cmcp@sandag.org. The CMCP hotline is 888-317-8976. And the CMCP text hotline is 844-569-0570. So thank you all for coming and providing your feedback for the San Vicente CMCP. We, again, greatly appreciate it, and we hope you have a great rest of the night. Thank you.